So the one most important thing that people have to understand about their court system is how radically different it has become since COVID. I practiced for 25 plus years, and in all of those 20 previous years, law was what you see on TV in some respects. You'd be in your office, dressed nicely, suit, tie, matching pants, matching top, and you'd be preparing for days to walk into court with your briefcase, cases in there, saying hi to the bailiff, saying hi to opposing counsel, the nerves fluttering, and then going into the courtroom, the heavy door slamming, the church pews in solid oak, and, the big imposing judge up there. COVID comes along, and I'll remember what that felt like. So, you have trials and hearings set up over the next month, and the chief judge issues an order that there's no more in-person hearings in court, and that everything was converting to telephonic. And that sort of sent shockwaves to the whole legal community because, again, many of us have spent decades going into court, and, both on our personal side where our wives and kids were freaking out over COVID, we come to the office and now that's just turned upside down and you're told you're just not going to court anymore. Fun story. I did the very first Zoom trial with one of the judges here. It was really interesting because, here's a judge, she'd been around forever and, used to marking exhibits A and handing it to the other side, and the physical exchange of documents, the tactile experience of that. Well, here we had this trial scheduled, and she said, we got two choices. We can either cancel it and wait and see what happens, or we can try and do it by Zoom. And she said, I've never done it, but I'm willing to give it a try. So the other side, we talked about it, and we decided that we were going to go by Zoom. And I remember as we started this thing, and the other attorney and I, who'd worked together, okay, but of course we battle as lawyers. But here we are doing the trial, and the judge asks for Exhibit 53. And, I figure out how on Zoom to share it. And then all of a sudden the other one shares it. And in that process, we both were learning, all three of us were learning, hey, here's how this works. And as the trial developed, the judge would say, hey, what about document 54? And either he or I would, boom, pop it right up on screen, document 54. Give me page 53 in there. Boom, boom, boom. We'd go to it. But at the end of the trial, the judge said, this was the first time I've ever done that. And she commended both of us for navigating this and really sharing it. And she said, the scary thing is this is going to be what this is going to be like going forward. And there were a lot of positives to it, right? I, frankly, much easier to organize exhibits and documents and everything. Got more comfortable with sitting here and navigating the documents. But what I want people to understand, and that was 2020, I guess it was, but the critical thing that people need to understand is that in many parts of the state, courts have never returned to in-person. And that has a lot of implications. There's some things that people need to understand about the court system, and that is each individual judge is in entire control of their entire docket and how they run their courtroom. That judge, she's the queen of the kingdom. He's the king of their kingdom. And for the 2,000 cases underneath him, they do exactly what they want. And, prior to COVID, there was a statewide policy that you had to be in person, and judges were absolutely demanding that you be in person. There was a limited function that you could call in for telephonic hearings, and that was by rule, but it was statewide. But what we learned because of COVID was, hold on a second, that was unnecessary. There were grave inefficiencies with having lawyers driving all across the state for a hearing that might take 15 minutes and that could just as easily be accomplished on the telephone or via Zoom. And again, the thing that was so interesting is that in your entire 20-year practice ahead of that, you were getting hammered on by judges to be in my courtroom and show the respect and walk up to the podium and get the whole physical experience of being in a courtroom. And you would make requests to appear by telephone, and routinely, not just no, but hell no. You will get your butt here with your client 9 a.m. Monday morning. And again, it's just so interesting how quickly that flipped, that judges realized, hey, we can do this by Zoom. But here we are. Obviously, we're way past COVID, and the vast majority of cases on the civil side are still being accomplished by Zoom. And it has vast implications for the entire judicial system. I'll give you one right close to home. So just behind me over there, the Second District Court of Appeals just opened. Brand new building, brand new courthouse. Went through a number of changes along the way. They started with 75,000 square feet down to, I think, 35,000 square feet, based in part upon the concept of oral argument, sort of the apex of the practice of law. You know, you got trial court wherein you're plaintiff defendant and witnesses and all that sort of thing. Oral argument, 3-judge panel standing up there making an argument. Again, many of those have converted to Zoom. You have a Zoom option in many cases. So they decided they no longer needed this huge courtroom. But obviously a lot's missing. There was so much that occurred in the live presentation of court, beginning with walking into that courthouse. Even doing something 20, 25 years, the anxiety, the flutter of nerves that you get walking in there, but bumping into your colleagues in the hallway while you're waiting to get checked in, while you're seeing the bailiffs. Frankly, that was my biggest referral source. People I saw in the courthouse, opposing counsel, counsel on my side, bailiffs, judges. That whole experience of carrying yourself as a lawyer that was respected, that was personable, that would take calls whenever, that would respect a referral that you got no matter where it came from. If it came from opposing counsel and their parents would refer you to, if it came from bailiffs or whatever else, you had tremendous amount of respect for that referral because you knew that came from somebody that you cared about. Well, so much of that is gone, and we're no longer rubbing shoulders. Missing is that social lubricant of being in the courtroom and around other people. There's another huge aspect of this, and that is the tone and the tenor of lawyers in the practice of law has dramatically changed. Used to be that, because you'd see other lawyers in the courthouse every day, sitting in the pews behind you, sitting with the other group of lawyers. There was a lot of self-regulating of conduct, behavior, and how you would treat one another. You would never, in that environment, lash out at somebody that was just doing their job and doing it correctly in the way that we are seeing right now. Because we're not seeing each other eye to eye in the courtroom, because we're not, talking about how's your kid doing, how's your wife doing, sorry about this, sorry about that, glad your kid did that, saw you on Facebook. So much less of that is occurring right now. It is provoking so much, I was going to say misconduct, but attacks, personal attacks, things that are very damaging to the practice of law, very distracting from the cases for individuals. And again, a huge part of that is that we're not sitting in the elevator with one another and, smarting because you just kicked my butt, or smarting because I just kicked your butt, but knowing I'm going to get your butt the next time around. And that's literally the way it worked. Some of the very best cases are ones where your friend, someone that you really liked or that really liked you, walked in there smiling on the elevator, chit-chatting with you, but you walk up in front of that judge and he just pounds on you, maybe catches you with something that you didn't quite get. But if anybody's done sports, you can appreciate this and understand what this dynamic is. When you respect someone and they go into the boxing ring and they just pound on you. Maybe you didn't practice as hard as you needed to do. Maybe you didn't have the full preparation that you needed to go in that boxing ring, but your buddy just beat the bejesus out of you. You earned respect, and he probably got respect for you taking a good whipping. Same thing about the judge. And this is something after 25 years of practice. And I can remember sitting in courtrooms, judge sitting up there and, 50 people on either side coming up there. And, judge would call up Widener versus Goldberg. And, judge would know that we were really good friends. And the judge was holding court, literally, and the audience behind him. He would absolutely, for older lawyers that knew what they were doing, he was not afraid to put you through your paces. And a lot of it now I recognize as theater, right? So he'd be busting my chops over something hard. And then Goldberg over here would realize that the judge had sensed a little bit of weakness or a little bit of blood, and then he would just jump in and just start pounding. And the judge would see this dynamic, and he would, pump it up a little bit and say, yeah, you're right, there, Goldberg, he's right. And again, that was the theater component of it. And I'm sure, I know from the younger lawyers in the back, they go, oh my God, the judge is up there yelling at this guy, and this guy over here is yelling at him. And you would only realize, if you'd been around for a couple decades, that this pounding, this beating that was occurring was the very best parts of the practice of law. And in this exchange, this exercise of fighting like that in front of the judge, again, was the very best part, the elevation, the apex of the practice of law. And, when you got done and the judge ruled against me or ruled against you, you would just turn around and walk out and go on the elevator and go, son of a gun, I'm going to get you next time. And you literally would. That's the best practice of law. But when you think about it, when these two guys are sitting up there battling and you're seeing it live, everybody back there in the back is going, man, I'm sending my mom to that guy to be represented, or I'm sending my dad to that guy to be represented. And that's literally the way it would happen. So, in the courtroom, there'd be, 50, 100 people, 100 lawyers sometimes. And they wouldn't be able to take a case that would call in or something. And based on what they saw in that courtroom, what they knew about you, you would get that phone call the next day. Hell, walking out of the courtroom, oftentimes you'd get mobbed. Somebody would come up and they go, hey, dude, I need you to call, or I'm going to have my mom call you, or I'm going to have my dad call you because I really need you to take good care of him. That's just the way it worked. That's gone. That's done forever. And we are still sort of dealing with the fallout from that.